Welcome to More Money Without a Raise, How Intention Builds Wealth, even though your paycheck is the same. Myself and Megan are here to kind of walk through our story in terms of how we built wealth even before we were making $100,000 a year, just so that you're aware of what's possible instead of thinking of where your income is as a limitation. So I'm going to get started by introducing myself. My name is Prisca. I'm a money coach and I own Our Green Life. And I help professional women create a plan for their money that allows them to live their best life now while they're also securing their dream future. And this means that they're able to save consistently, pay down debt faster, and invest more freely. Megan, could you introduce yourself?
Yes. So, hi, I'm Megan, and I am the face behind Budgeting with Megan. I'm a money mentor, and I help women who are handling their family finances, usually alone. And I help them to learn how to create a budget that works for their real life. So, I'm pretty sure I've made all the money mistakes that you can make. So, I like to teach what I wish I would have known back then when I was trying to get my money all figured out.
I totally relate to that. And so that's why we're going to actually talk about why and how our money stories got started. Because you might find things that are very similar in your money story that you could emulate. Okay, how did you manage this? So we're going to run through how we started with money, what it was like to build intention, and then the result of this intention, right? Then we have time for Q&A at the end. Okay. So let's first off, we want to make sure that the kind of agenda is clear that getting ahead does not require you making more money. Now, are we going to say no to more money? Heck no. Okay. We are going to accept and welcome more income in our lives. However, we don't have to wait till then to make financial progress. And so that's the premise of this discussion today. So we're going to start with Megan. So I want to chit chat with you a little bit about how you started off with money, your kind of first memories of money and how you feel like it impacted you.
Yeah, definitely. Because I do feel like your childhood does shape your money mindset as an adult, and we just don't realize that. So I was brought up rarely being told no. So I would say which a spoiled brat, and I own that. But we didn't I wasn't from like a super rich family. Like we were very much middle class. I would love to know how they did it, but they they never seen no one ever talked about money in my family. And like I said, I was just never told no. So I just thought you just get what you want. And so as I got to be an adult, I married very young at 19. I thought you could just spend money. So I was I'm a spender, still am. I've learned how to control it, but it made me become a spender. And also I had no guardrails whatsoever or limitations with my money. And so we were broke. And like I said, I've made all the money mistakes. I, filed bankruptcy and was all the things. And so I think because no one ever talked about it and no one ever showed me what to do with money, I went in blind and I really had no clue for most of my adult life.
Yeah, I can imagine. So when it came to the fact that you were never told no, explain more about how it got to the decision to file for bankruptcy.
So I also didn't want to stress out my husband. So I handled everything, all the bills, the money. Said he really had no clue. So in order to pay a bill, I would go get a payday loan to cover the bill. And then I wouldn't be able to pay that. And then we racked up, of course, a ton of credit card debt. So by our mid 20s, we are well beyond living paycheck to paycheck. Like there's always or more month than there was money. And so, by our mid 20s, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so we finally decided, I had a car I couldn't afford to pay for that we let go back. Of course, my husband also grew up very differently. And his mom's exact words to him were, "Oh, you just rack up debt and you file bankruptcy and it goes away and you start over." And so we, knew that. And so he was like, "Well, let's just file bankruptcy." And so we did. We did not learn our lesson and got right back into it, but that's.
Gotcha. Thanks for sharing. There's some differences, of course, in our story, but also some similarities. So for one, my mini story begins with me just being born in America because of the fact that my family is Haitian. So I'm first generation Haitian American, right? And so what I heard a lot of was no, right? And so, oh, we can't afford this, but no one ever actually explained like how money functions. It was like, no, we can't do that. I was so used to hearing it that I remember my first money memory is actually, I can't wait for me to make money so I could buy whatever I want. Right? And so this also coupled with the fact that being first generation American meant that my family wasn't as attuned to the financial systems here. So while I did have examples of like saver, my dad was a pretty decent saver, but I don't think he ever invested. I think he still hasn't invested. Versus my mom, who would leverage debt to do things. And so that was what I was used to. I gravitated more to my mother's style of managing money. So as a result, through college, I did pretty well when it came to like student debt because I had a scholarship. I knew I didn't have a lot of money to go to school with because my mom had a finite number. Here you go, and you got to figure out the rest. She didn't say it like that, but that's just how it was. And so I did take out a little bit of school loans, what my scholarship did not cover, because I did get a scholarship. I did go to in-state school. These are good money decisions I made. And I didn't dorm. So of course, cost still. But even then, like I would take out extra student loans just so that I can get cash back. Right. And this is debt, but I'm not feeling it. People would describe it to me as, oh, this is a refund check. I'm like, that just sounds like money. And when you're a struggling college kid, I'm like, this is perfect. But with all that too, I was eating out. I was spending a lot of money on my credit cards I didn't necessarily need to. And then finally, the big caveat was like, once I got my degree in nursing, I went to buy my first car, and I knew what car I was going to get because I'm not a big car girly. But there was a car that caught my attention. I'm gonna get it. So I get the car, right? Great. Then when it's time for maintenance, I go take the car in, and then they let me have a car to like take with me, like a loaner car. I'm like, nah, I want this one now. Okay. So I just switched that car out and got this one, not actually thinking about the consequences of, oh, this is a loan that you're now restarting, like not giving any foresight whatsoever. And so as a result, not only did I have just debt ongoing, I had my credit cards I would pay it down just so I could charge it up. I would leave the store. I love shoes so much. I would leave the store with my arms so full of shoes, okay, that I couldn't even hold them all. And I only got about 2 feet, but that's just what it was. And so the reason why we're bringing our stories, not just for the sake of telling a story, but like your background matters, right? There's an origin to how we think and feel about money. And then how do we change that or reframe that or leverage that to make better decisions? So we don't all start, you guys might have a similar experience, and we all start off with the right foot when it comes to money. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be unsuccessful with money forever, right? The other thing that was notable when it came to first kind of starting to shift was the getting married part. I also got married young, but my husband didn't have debt. And that was just a new approach for me. I was like, oh, he could like do stuff with his paychecks. That's interesting. And so for that started like being the catalyst to making change, though it wasn't that dramatic at first. Okay. Kind of for you, Megan, I know we chatted a bit about kind of like hiding stuff when it came to finances. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah. So I was the queen of that. So like I said earlier, I didn't want to stress him out. So I took on all that burden myself, trying to figure out how to pay bills and how we were going to do things. And so I ended up eventually having a credit card he didn't know about. When we filed the bankruptcy, the first time I started hiding stuff was those payday loans. He had no idea I was doing that. And then when we were sitting in the waiting room or whatever before we went into the courtroom, he's looking through the list of stuff we're filing bankruptcy on, and he finds those payday loans. And so, that led to a huge fight. And then years go on, I had a jewelry business about 8 years ago, and I had PayPal credit that I had maxed out, and he did not know about that. The Kohl's credit card, and I even took a 401k loan to pay for my son's first year of college that he did not know about. And so, and that was through the years that it all added up. But the biggest thing is when it all came out at one time. And so that's where, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, of where my shift really began, because up to that point, we were not on the same page. And that's a huge thing too. When you're with a partner and if you're not letting your money work together, that causes a rift also. Because like you said, you saw your husband getting to spend money and you were like, wait a minute, I don't get to. And so when we were that same way, we were, I was paying I felt like I was paying all the bills, and he was a good saver. And so he was saving, but he was also, he would go do what he wanted. And I'm like, wait a minute, this ain't fair. And so, yeah, so that led me to, and I had a secret account that so much of not very much, it was like $25 or $50 went into a separate bank account just so I had some extra money for me and that he didn't know about. So yeah, what's the queen of hiding things? I do not recommend it.
Agreed. And so there's, some people call things like that, what's called financial infidelity, where the person is unaware of what's going on with their finances. A lot of people are very nervous to bring up what's going on with their finances. And sometimes not even necessarily a nervous, because there's two ways of looking at it. It could be, yeah, I'm afraid this person's going to leave me if they find out about this. But it's also like, I don't really want to stress this person out, which could be a very like nice motive, but it's not fair to the person to not know the whole picture. And also it's not fair to you to have to carry that burden alone. It's not to say that, oh, now you make this person responsible for your debt, but come to a decision together. You're partners for a reason. And so allow that person to be your partner.
I was just going to say, I was having conversations in my head that he didn't even know that he was a part of. But I thought he was going to say this and this. And he never even got a chance to say anything because I never told him.
So now let's talk about shifting into being more intentional with money. So Magan, I'll let you start about like what that shift was like for you and what were like the first steps to helping.
Yeah, so it was a gradual thing for me. I didn't just wake up one day and go, okay, I'm budgeted and all was great. So it started probably in my 30s. We had twins when I was 30, and that changed our financial stuff also. So I started off with groceries. I can save money on groceries. I can meal plan. I can look at sales, and I can coupon. And so that was something I could control. So that little bit, got me looking more at our money. And then I dabbled in budgeting. So I thought I was basically just making a list. I would write my income, what our bills were, but I never went back and like saw what I was actually spending on that. And so I still couldn't figure out, why do I not have any more money? And so then I went completely, not even nothing to do with finances, went on a self-improvement journey with my health, with my mental health, and started listening to podcasts, reading books. And once I got that under control, I was like, okay, it's time to now get the finances under control. So again, read some books, listened to some podcasts, made a spreadsheet, and started having conversations with my husband. He still was not on board. But I started those conversations, and I started doing just little things, tracking my money in a spreadsheet, just a really basic spreadsheet that I created. And he started listening to the same podcast. And then he started bringing up the conversations, and we looked at the spreadsheet together. And that's when we decided, okay, we're going to do this budgeting thing. That's when it was after we decided we were going to start budgeting that we had the huge blow up that he found out about the stuff I was hiding. And so that broke all trust. That did. I didn't know. It almost ended our marriage. And so because we had started that, I decided to give myself a guardrail. And people, I have to explain it that it was my idea. It was not my husband's. He's not a controlling person. But every time I swap my card, he gets a text. And so what that does is that stops me in the moment. Do I really need this? Do I want to explain it to him? And it just gives me that few seconds to if I need to spend the money or not. So that helped my spending. That keeps me straight. That helped rebuild that trust. And that helps him to know that I'm not just spending all the money, because he can look at that spreadsheet. We both have access to the spreadsheet now. He looks at it. He knows, oh, she's budgeted $100 for whatever. And so if I go buy that whatever, he doesn't stress. And so that helps him. And so we can have those conversations. And then our goal was to pay off all of our debt except for the mortgage. And we were bringing in under 100K together. And we made some intentional decisions to pay my car off because that was the last thing, because we'd already paid the credit cards off. And so we needed to pay my car off. And so we did not go on vacations, and any extra money went straight to that car payment. And so within 3 years, we were able to get all the debt paid off. And now we just have the mortgage payment, and we're able to, put money in investment, put money in savings. And, we're fixing to have to buy 2 cars because I got my twins are turning 16. And so that's what, how it started, how it's built, and how it's going. So how about you?
Well, before me, I just wanted to point out some things about what you're saying. So first off, I liked when, Megan started her story, she's talking about like starting off with one area, right? Because sometimes like when you're starting something new, like, okay, I'm going to take a new look at my finances now. I want to build wealth. I want to do something new. It's like you're trying to do all the things. Like people say you need to pay off debt, you need to invest, you need to do this, you need that. It's like, whoa, pump the brakes, okay? Because that makes it where people get stuck in indecision. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Or I feel like they're pulling themselves in all sorts of directions. Is very challenging. So it's very good to get started. Pick a thing. What is something you can control in your budget? Shopping, groceries, travel, whatever the case may be. What is it that we can hone in on that's going to make an impact, right? Because sometimes, they'll say like, oh, cut out your coffee. Depends on how much coffee you're buying, because if it's not hundreds of dollars worth in a month, then that's cutting it out is not going to make the biggest impact. And this is something when I'm coaching my clients too, okay, it looks like based on how much they're bringing in a month that they need to make some cuts. I'm like, there's only but so much subscriptions you could cut. Like, come on, like you got to make big moves, but you get to make that decision, right? I don't make that decision for my clients. I tell them, you tell me which one of these things can we tweak in order to do that. So I think that was a great example. Is first picking one area to focus in on, and that'll help make it all more manageable. The other thing that was notable to me is creating those guardrails, right? So nowadays, spending money is so mindless, okay? Everybody I meet says they don't make enough. And yet, when I work with them, I always find money, okay? So it's because we just swipe, right? We all just swipe. And it's easier now because like you have the things like all you have to do is look at your phone to pay for something, or double tap on the side, or your Amazon stores your credit card information so you never have to think about it. All these things, so many apps now have it where you can add your credit card straight into the process, right? So you never have to think about your credit card again. You think they're doing that for you? They're doing that for themselves, okay? To make sure that they do their income. So creating your own guardrails. First was, setting it up so that whenever she swipes, her husband gets the text. Why is this important? She said, hey, this creates some time to reflect, right? Because they're trying to make the spending mindless. Let's put some thought behind it. Create friction between the thought to make the purchase and the actual purchase, and you'll see that you wind up spending so much less. So on my end, basically what happened with me was once we started being a little bit more intentional with money, we started paying down the credit card debt. I was spending more responsibly, like more thoughtfully, planning ahead for vacations, like putting money in an account for vacations that when you come back, like you don't have to worry, oh my God, like I gotta pay this vacation off. Like it's supposed to be relaxing, right? So doing things like that was helpful. We also, even at one point, this is how my house was. We at one point had 3 cars. We're 2 people, to be clear. And then eventually we actually went down to 1 car. And I think one of the big things with me that is a through line through my whole story is I'm not afraid to try things. Like, what's the worst that could happen if we have 1 car? It could be annoying, right? When you want to go somewhere and it's not that easy to just get up and go. However, we did it, I think, almost 2 years before I got uncomfortable. So think about all the savings that happened in that time is that could like launch whatever goals you're trying to do, whether it's paying down debt faster, whether it's saving more, whether it's investing more. And I feel like a lot of people in general are afraid to make such impactful decisions because they don't want to be uncomfortable. But to me, debt is uncomfortable. Not like just any debt. Like I have a mortgage and I have a car loan. So I'm not like debt averse by any means. But when it's taken away from my day to day, when it's stressing me out, when I'm thinking about it, that kind of stuff, I don't want that in my life. And so think about like what it would mean for you to accomplish whatever goal it is and what would it take for you to accomplish that. You don't have to like, I was still going on vacation while I was paying down my debt. I ate out, but it's all intention, right? And so the other thing that I did was as I was coming to learn about personal finance. So in 2013, I got married. 18 is when I actually started like really diving into personal finance. So it was like, I was kind of like a newborn, I feel like, in personal finance before that. And I started listening to stuff and I was learning these concepts. And I'll tell you something, when you listen to people who have achieved what you want to achieve, and you have the mindset of how can I do that versus, oh, that's not possible for me, it makes a big difference. Those are two different kind of people. And you get to decide what kind of person you want to be. Okay. No, I'm not going to have Kim K money in this lifetime. I don't want to do Kim K things to have Kim K money. Okay. However, what I will do is, hey, I learned about maxing out my retirement. I'm just learning this at dang near 30 years old. Is that even feasible for me? I don't know, but I'm a damn sure it's right. Okay. And so what I did was at the time I was contributing 6% to my retirement. I learned about maxing out, did the math. I was like, oh, that means I have to do 22%. It's like, that's wild. Okay. Especially when you've never done something like that before, it feels intense. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. Most times, and you may experience this too, if you log into your work retirement plan, you can switch that number up and down as much as you want, right? And it takes a couple weeks for it to kick in. I was like, let me do this for one paycheck, right? Be willing to try. Okay? Do it for one paycheck. If I hate it, I'll move it back. Maybe I'll move it down to 7, 8%. I moved to 22% and nothing changed. Yes, I had less money dropping into my account, but I didn't feel like, I thought I was going to feel anxious, like feel heavy or scared. And I did not feel any of those. Let's keep this going as long as I could tolerate it. And I have never reversed it since. Okay. So it's not to say that, oh, you're going to have the same experience as me. Nobody will have the same money story. Okay. Everybody is uniquely different. However, the belief of, hey, I see something that someone else is doing. Can I try that too? Is that feasible for me? If it's not, can I get as close as possible to that? These are the mentalities that are going to make you build wealth, despite the fact that you're making the same income you did yesterday. Okay. The Prisca that before the personal finance podcast was making the same money as the Prisca after. And I had not hit 100K yet. Irrelevant. Okay. The wealth is being built regardless. Okay. So that's kind of like the gist of like how I started to be more intentional. So everything pretty much is planned for when it comes to finances. And of course, you have to have emergency funds for the stuff that you can't plan for. But doing money on purpose is like my big shtick, right? It's so helpful in terms of taking ownership. You know, there's things happening out there, right? Inflation is happening. Income not increasing as much as inflation. That's happening. And so what are you going to do about it? Okay. I'm not saying there's nothing to do about those things, but the most thing is what we could do in our house. Are we going to keep buying groceries the same way? Like I definitely changed how I shopped since after COVID when those prices went up. I cannot, some things were organic. I'm like, I got to stop eating organic for doing this stuff. These are choices you get to make instead of just saying, oh, the world's on fire. And how does that help your wallet? You know? So I really want to put in people, like empower people to make decisions. Yes, costs are high. And here's what I'm going to do about it. Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Megan?
Yeah, it's not a all or nothing thing. It is I'm going to try and I'm going to do. And so a lot of people's like, well, I can't put, $100 in savings, so I'm just not even going to save anything. And that's not the case. Like we built our emergency fund starting at $10 a pay period. The biggest thing is not the amount you start with, it's the habit that you build.
Yep.
And so just building that habit, getting used to putting that money, and you want to, anytime you're doing the saving or the investing, do it first. It comes out first, and then you budget with what's left. Because if you're trying to do your budget and then save with what's left at the end, 9 out of 10 times there ain't nothing going to be left because you're like, oh, I got this money, I'm going to spend it. And so put it in a separate bank account, have it, set it and forget it type of thing. And you'll be surprised at how quickly it grows. I mean, we did that with my oldest son before he moved out. I was like, I want you to have a month or a year's worth of rent saved up before you move out. And to him at that time sounded impossible. He was working part-time, but luckily he's not a spender. But I told him when he started getting paid, I'm like, hey, just take $100 out of your check. We're feeding you. You ain't got rent. There's no reason you don't need money. And so he would do that. Now, if he wanted to buy something, it was his money. He could definitely get more. But he started doing that. Well, he started seeing that bank account grow. And so he was able to get that money saved up. We slowly gave him his bills. Okay, now you're going to start paying your insurance. Now you're going to start paying your cell phone bill to get him used to paying bills. And the kid moved out. He's been out almost 3 years, still has that years of rent saved in a high yield savings account that he hasn't touched. He has no credit cards, no car payments. He is not making very much. But because we taught him those intentional decisions at a young age, he can do it. And so it can be done. I see it every day.
I want to add to that too, that the difference from when you talk about paying yourself first, making sure you pay yourself for money in savings or retirement first. When I first learned about Pay It First, before that, I was saving what was left. So the amount that was saving varied so much from month to month, right? It could be like $100 here, $300 here. And so the feelings of the savings, especially then if you needed to use the savings, it just felt like much bumpier every time you needed to use it. Versus now that I save first and then spend what's left, what I found was my saving account just kept going up and up and up and up and up, right? And when you need it, when you need to use it, like I have money set aside just for spending, like for vacations. When I go to that vacation, yeah, I use that, but then it doesn't take long for it to build back up again because I have a routine of putting a set amount every single paycheck. Okay. So that's what pay yourself first means. Some people count putting money towards your retirement towards that as well. And I agree, but just know too, what tends to happen with people mentally is that because that's where the bulk of their money is, they're like, to them, it's like, oh, well, this is money I want to access. I can access when I want to. But then that defeats the whole point, right? You want to allow it to build up so that future you is covered, right? And then so now we're just going to move into what wealth building has been like, right? Magan, we were talking about like some like that money anxiety that people might feel and how you can support them through actually building consistency when it comes to finances.
The biggest thing is you got to know what you got. Like you need to know what is coming in and what is going out. Like that's very important to start off anything. That's the first thing I do with my clients is we got to see what we're dealing with. And then you make the plan. And we've, kind of talked about it before. Even though if I've got the money sitting in the bank account, it is not earmarked for, let's say I want to go buy a new couch, that's a bigger purchase. I'm not just going to go spend that money without a plan. And so we have all kinds of sinking funds for those big purchases. And so we will intentionally, put the money in it because I don't need a new couch tomorrow. I can wait. Like I think patience and waiting as you're building is a big thing. It's just it's all about the mindset. And when you're doing the investing, it's going to go up and down. Like, don't freak out. Just let it ride. We have seen that over the last few years. We've had some really highs and some really lows, but we're just patient because that money is for future us. And so I do care what it does, but I don't care, like it's going to be there when I need it. And so I'm making decisions now with the money that is coming into our account for the now stuff, making sure that it's going where it needs to go, but also making sure that I don't touch that because that is so tempting. I did it, I pulled the 401k loan. It was, it was there. I pulled it. And now I'm like, and this is the side tangent, but you'll hear people say, well, I'm paying myself back, but you've lost so much compound interest. And I did not know that word when I did it. But now that I know what compound interest means, I'm very sad that I did it.
Yeah. Oh, man. So, yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to pull from what you said for sure is when it comes to building the intention, when we talk about investing, which is key to wealth building, right? Saving can only get you but so far. Saving is good for the here and now, but in order to build for your future, build a lifetime where a life where you don't have to work well into your old age. If you want to, you can, but it's to give you the choice right? Then investing is absolutely key. Now, people will, and I think somebody submitted a question about that too, like nervous or anxious when it comes to investing. My first experience investing, I told you what kind of person I am, right? I try anything. So I was working at Walgreens while I was in college, and I said, Auntie, I can't remember her name, but I was like, Auntie came up to me and was like, young lady, you need to be investing. I was like, okay. I went in home and I opened a share builder account. If anybody remembers share builder, that was before, and it was like ING, then it became Capital One Investing, and now it no longer exists. But I just went and did it. Did I even know what I was doing? No. But being afraid to make a move will never make you rich. Okay. And I'm not saying blow all kinds of money. I didn't have a lot of money. I was a college girl. I just put in little money aside. And at the time, I actually treated it more like a savings account, like a way to keep money away from me because I was spending anything I could touch. Okay. So I put this away. Not that I'm recommending that's how you handle investing. I'm just saying this is how I started to get going. Right. And then once I started delving into investing, it didn't become something new to me, right? It was like, oh, I've done this before. I'm just learning to do it better. And so taking the fear and anxiety out of managing your funds, right? You need to be able to see what you're managing. You cannot, okay? A budget, people are like, oh, budget's so restrictive. You created the budget. The budget is whatever you make it, and it's only counting what came in and what's coming out. So whatever restriction is built in is of your doing, right? One way or the other. Whether it's because there's not I don't say of your doing just because sometimes the income just ain't enough. But for a lot of us, I know for most of my clients, the income is enough. Our spending is just outpacing what we're making. And it is not even on purpose. We're not trying to live a lavish life or whatever, but you just do mindless stuff and it's like, oh, everybody else is doing it, and you just kind of do it. So one of the key things I like to share with people is one is, of course, being intentional. I don't think you should have to wait until you're debt free to begin investing. Of course, that could depend on your situation. If it's really, really tight, if somebody has a lot of debt payments and they don't have room to invest, that's one thing. But even if you can invest $5, right, do it, right? That way you get into the practice of what it feels like when you see the markets go up and down. And when you first start and you're just like, I'm just getting into this, like it's anxiety raising. But then as you run through it a couple of times, when market goes up, market goes down, market goes up, market goes down, and you're like, it's like background noise. And there's always a lot of like hoopla on the news about it, right? It's, oh, the market dropped. And it's like, when you look at it over the course of decades, it's like a blip. So surround yourself with people who have positive views when it comes to money, not ignorance, right? I'm not for the talks of like, oh, abundance will always find me. It may not. Okay. I like a realistic thing to it, but people who always think woe is me when it comes to money, those are not people that are going to help you build wealth. You need to find money friends that can do that. And we could be those people if you'd like. Right? Also, Megan, I just wanted to, there was something we talked about before about you were sharing how sometimes people, you have supported clients and just opening their bills because they're so anxious about like looking at their finances. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So I definitely have had clients that they think, just the unknown. They don't, you don't know what you don't know. And so they get into this debt. And so the one client, she had a stack of mail and she was terrified to open it because she didn't know what it was going to be. You didn't know if it was going to be collections, if it was a bill. And so I literally got on a call like this, face to face. And I just sat there while she opened it. She just needed to know she was supported. And turns out when she opened it, it was like a $70 bill. Like it was nothing. She was stressing for weeks with this mail just in front of her. And it just took someone to just be there for her to help. And like I said, I didn't even do anything but sit there. And so, but she just needed that encouragement to do it. And so to me, it's a lot scarier not knowing your numbers than it is to know your numbers, because once you know them, you can work with them. Like numbers, you can make the math. But yeah, that's one of the one of the reasons I call myself a money mentor is because, I will walk beside and just hold your hand and answer those questions. There's ever no pressure. There's never any judgment. It's just, let's walk through this together and find the best fit for you to make it where you can sleep at night. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And for me, it's more for like, it's more than just being able to sleep at night, even though I know you do more than that, Megan, but
Yeah.
to me, it's more like having I want you to think of money and feel calm.
Yeah.
I want you to think of money and feel peace. Like, I am covered. I am taken care of. No, maybe there's some weird freak thing that could happen that could change it all, right? But that's not helpful. That's not a helpful mindset to have. And it may never happen, right? So we focus on what's here in the now. What can we control? Yes, investing. Yes, paying off debt. Yes, saving. Don't accept the money story that you're bad with money. Like, that's not a thing. It's not a personality trait. I went to school. I never learned how to manage money. So how am I supposed to turn 18 and just figure it out? Right. But we expect that of ourselves, especially when we might be in high paying careers, right? We've gone to college, maybe we have a degree or two under our belts and certifications. And then we're like, well, I should be able to manage my money. But you went to school for those things. You know, you got education for those things. And so we need to measure up all our life skills with that bar. Like, where would I have gotten this information from? Did I have somebody in my life that provided this guidance for me? And if you don't, don't be so hard on yourself. Just know that doesn't have to be your future. Your money past doesn't have to read into your money future. And so all in all, that's like the bulk of what we wanted to bring you today. We wanted to kind of share like our experiences because we have similarities. Everybody's going to have things that are similar and different. And like, what can we take from this in order to make a better future for ourselves so that we can experience a time where money doesn't feel so heavy. So for now, I'm going to go over some of the questions that we got for Q&A. First question is, can you still build wealth in your final 5 to 10 years of working? You want to answer that, Megan?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you going to probably build millions? Probably not, but you definitely can build, because you can start now and go for the next 10 years and have something, or you can do nothing and in 10 years have nothing. So
Yep.
the biggest thing is you got to start, and start now is the time to start. So, but you've got to set that goal, because if you have something you're working towards, you're more than likely to hit it. Now you want to set, the big goal, but you also want those micro goals, because, if you're looking at a 10-year goal, you're like, I'm never going to hit that. But if you're like, okay, I want to try realistically to save X amount. Let's reverse engineer it. I'd have to do that, so when this first year, if I can hit, $10,000, celebrate that goal, have a party, do whatever you need to do, but you need to celebrate those goals as you go. But the biggest thing is just reverse engineering it with the money that you've got. Like, you can't have a fantasy, I want to retire a millionaire, if you're making 60 grand a year or whatever. Like, I'm not going to do that math in my head. But yes, it can be done, but you got to start and you got to be intentional. And it will help to work with, like, I work with a free financial advisor or, investor. He, we didn't have a lot that we were investing. I felt silly using him. I'm like, he's going to think we're just little ants and he ain't going to do nothing for us. He was so nice and friendly and checks in on us, and he loves to work with my little bit of money, or I feel like he does, and so finding somebody to help you get to that point, to me, is a great thing to do.
Awesome. And the thing I just add too is that when you have such a small time frame, being intentional is all the more important, right? Being intentional does not mean you can't do things you enjoy. It's just that you're doing it on purpose, right? Okay, I have this allotted money that is going to my retirement or going towards savings, because you do need savings as well in retirement. You can't just rely on your investments. You got to have the balance of the two, but the investments is going to do the bulk of the legwork. Point is though, purpose, right? There's a lot of mistakes you get to make when you're starting off younger. You can still make mistakes as you get older, but you have less wiggle room for it, right? If you have a smaller timeline. So even more important is to, like, if you need the guidance, to seek it. Okay. The other question was about, how do I overcome debt so I can build wealth? Well, this is ironic because there's actually a debt payoff challenge that's live for registration now that I'm hosting. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you. It is free. It's a 5-day challenge that walks you through how to think through your debt so that you know when your debt payoff date is going to be. And I think that that's essential because a lot of people, while they do make plans to pay off the debt, I don't think anybody ever envisions when that end date is. And so it makes it so it feels like it's going to be forever. And the fact of the matter is, no. And knowing what the date is can help you make a lot of different decisions. Again, though, like I said before, paying off debt to me does not mean, oh, you cannot invest. You can absolutely do both, in my opinion. But of course, it varies per person. So I can't speak to that globally, but there's people out there that says that you absolutely cannot do both. And I don't agree with that. I do think you can do both, but you're just going to have to do a lot less when it comes to investing versus debt payoff, right? So for example, if you have $1,000 to save, pay off debt, and invest, maybe you're putting $200 towards your savings, maybe $700 towards your debt, and then $100 towards investing. And you could invest with those numbers however you want. Maybe you just want to put $5 towards investing, $25 towards investing. But the point is, you're putting the biggest chunk of your money towards your primary goal, which is paying off debt, right? Because you cannot putting more money into investing, like switching that 700 to 100 to investing might sound smart, except for the fact that your debt is probably costing you 20, 30% in interest, which you will never get in the market, okay, unless you hit it big, right? So, and that's not what we're doing here. We're talking about, growing money with intention. So put the bulk of the work towards your debt, but also put money to save. So that savings will be for things like not just your emergency fund, but for fun, okay? Because your debt payoff journey, for some people, it'll just be a year. Other people might be 4 or 5 years, right? Or maybe even longer. But you do have a date that's going to end. And in that meantime, you have to live your life. So you have to accommodate for that in your plan. And I help people create plans like that. Do you have anything to add to that, Megan?
No, I think you covered that.
Awesome.
Oh, wait,
All
I
right.
did. I'm sorry. I did. When you said the people will say certain things, the big money gurus, and you don't always agree with everything. 100%. Like we started off, I'll say, we started off listening to Dave Ramsey. I do not agree with everything he says. So, and that is okay. That is why you said earlier, it's personal. Every money journey is different. So every plan is going to be different. So I just want people to know that it's not that you have to agree with everything that you hear. You have to make it your own. Otherwise, you're not going to stick to it.
Yep. Agreed. Your plan has to make sense for you, not just for general pop. Okay. And that's another thing too. I hear a lot of frustration sometimes in the personal finance space in terms of content, like, oh, this is generic advice. Everybody says, well, yeah, nobody knows the situation. They can't create the plan or content that's specifically for you and your situation. But we have to do what we got. Like we could adapt it. Same way when it came to how I handled investing, how I handled savings. Like it wasn't exact. Like they were talking about savings rates and how who wants to like this cost per meal. I'm like, I'm not doing all that. I have zero interest in figuring stuff like that out. Zero interest.
Yeah. And I think, but that's why you work with someone like me and Prisca, because we can make that personalized plan and not the generic advice. And so, because you can listen to YouTube, you can listen to a podcast, and you can get an idea and you can get started. Like I said, that's how I got started. But I think if you want to do it, I don't want to say quickly, but if you want to like really do it, then I think you need someone to help you personally do it step by step.
Yeah, it'll get you the results faster, which is what I was saying to the person earlier that has this smaller time frame, especially. But even then, if you want to, like, I have a client, she's younger than me, and I'm just like, I'm so proud of her because, like, I'm like, what she's doing now is going to serve so many dividends down the line, right? Life is going to be so much easier for her because she decided to get help now. So whether you are later in life and you want to save time, or you're earlier in life and you just want to do it well faster, right? Because there's a lot of years. Remember when I first got married and I learned that my husband could save money, and I'm learning to save. I'm like, that was in 2013. I didn't learn how to intentionally invest in 2018 because I was doing it by myself. And so there's a lot of learning curve that you get to skip when you work with someone. Okay, there's two more I want to cover. One is person says she's 52, starting her second career, 2 years left before she'll be licensed. How can I build wealth to allow for retirement when I want to? even though it might be later on in life. So she said she might retire when she's 70 or 80, but she still wants to have that option, right? And so the one thing I'll say is that as long as you're making money, you can invest in a Roth IRA. Okay. So and you have to make income to do that, just to be clear. So if you're in school and you're not making money, you can't put money in a Roth IRA, but you could put money into a brokerage account if somehow you have funds that can help you do that. Now, when it comes to building wealth for retirement, if your workplace has a retirement plan, that's going to be your best bet, because currently for 2026, the general limit is $24,500 a year that you could put in there. It's even higher for people who are above 50. Okay. They have catch-up contributions. So this is where you can literally pile money in, because your Roth limitations are 7,500. There are some catch-up contribution options, but it's nowhere near what you're going to be able to accomplish if in your work retirement plan. So for now, while you're in school and not making that income yet, you could put money in the Roth IRA as long as you're making income. And if you're not, again, you can put money in a brokerage account. Once that job starts, throw money in that 401k. If you have any old 401ks too, roll it over into your new 401k. Because what happened is some people will just like, oh, they lose it, they forget about it. It's your money, go get it. Okay, go get it. And that way, you know exactly where everything is. And then time comes, Social Security then eventually will kick in. 62, I believe, is the earliest age you can get it. Though if you wait a little longer, the amount you get increases, with every year you wait. And I can't remember what the limit is where you have to start taking it. It's like either 67 or 70. But I mean, you plan on working till then anyway. So you could actually hold off on that so that you can have some more income down the line. Now, the next question we kind of addressed before, but is around like fear of investing. Okay. So I also held an investing challenge not so long ago, and I will hold another one later this year. But for now, let's answer this. What's the difference between ETF or index funds? Let me tell you something. There is a difference. It doesn't matter. Okay. So the difference really between ETFs and index funds is that ETFs, the price changes throughout the day, like any stock. So like if you ever like Google, right? Do this per practice. You can go do this right now. Google Apple, and you look at it like for this day, and you'll see the numbers go up and down, up and down. So ETFs, let's say like VTI, which is the total stock market index ETF, then it'll go up and down throughout the day. If you look at the index fund version, VTSAX, today is going to be flat. Okay. It only changes in price once per day. Right. So what would make you choose one versus the other? Not so much, oh, which is going to make me more money. They're the same in that sense, but more so like sometimes index funds, you need to have a certain amount to buy into it. They call those, oh my God, I haven't had to do this in so long, I forgot. It's like an initial investment that you have to make in order to buy into it. So that sometimes could be a barrier, even though a lot of people don't have the barrier anymore. I rarely ever see it, which is why I kind of forgot even what it was called. Also, the benefit of an index fund though is that it's really set and forget once you've done it, because the price doesn't change that often. You can do automatic investing forever and never have to worry about it again. ETFs, because the prices fluctuate, you can set and forget it, but it's less depending on what platform you use. So platforms like that allow for what's called a fractional share, where you can buy a piece of a fund, allow you to automate it. Okay, I'm going to invest $20 every paycheck into this fund like VTI. Okay, this is an example. I'm not telling you to invest in VTI, be clear, guys. Okay. But I'm just telling you that's an example. Oh, I'm going to put aside $20 for VTI. But if your platform that you choose does not allow you to do fractional shares, you can't just say I want $20 of VTI, because if it costs $30, you don't have enough. Okay. So that's the main differences between the two. Okay. If your thing has fractional shares, you kind of do either index funds or ETFs, and it doesn't really matter. You can automate all of them. Now, in terms of what to choose, because I cannot tell that, I'm not a financial advisor, I will not tell you what to choose. However, I will recommend a book that I think is awesome for helping guide you and get started. So I'll actually recommend two. So my first one that really got me over the fear or anxiety is like, keep it simple, is A Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. Okay. The Simple Path to Wealth is like, makes it so easy to dive in without feeling like you need floaties. Okay. It's like, okay, here's the simple thing you need to do. Do this over and over again, and you'll likely have success. Okay. The other person that I like to, in terms of teaching this, is Ramit Sethi. He has a book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich, which is so funny because it just sounds like a scammy behind book. I will teach you to be rich, but it's not at all. It's very practical. And it actually walks you through more than just investing, but how to set up your finances. Okay. So if you start Simple Path to Wealth is an easier book. J.L. Collins, when he wrote it for his daughter who could not care less about investing. So he made the content very approachable so that when she was ready to, she could just read it and build wealth. And I'll Teach You to Be Rich is more like getting people engaged when it comes to their finances. And I'm just checking to see if there's another part to that question. Oh, how do I choose when there's so many? Read the books. Okay. I'm having trouble starting investing because of fear, perfectionism. So I hope earlier in the session, I kind of told you my starter when it comes to investing. Getting started is the best way to get over the fear. Don't start with a lot if you're scared. Start with an amount that you're not afraid to lose, and then dip your toes in and keep practicing the skill. Practice the skill. And then eventually, you might get even too big for your britches. I did. Where COVID time came and people were doing individual stocks. I was like, oh, they play with this and stuff. I was like, oh, I don't like this shit. I'm not gonna do this anymore. Yeah. So you could get to that point, not recommending that, but I'm just saying that's how building the reps in, putting the reps in can help you get to the point where you feel strong enough to do this. And then as you're doing it, you get to learn what you could tolerate and not. Again, I highly encourage, if you have a bunch of naysayers in your life that are so afraid of investing and it's so scary, then that's exactly where you're going to be. Okay. So you need to put people in your life, whether it's through Facebook groups, whatever other group they're out there where you build their community, a money coach, whatever the case may be. You need to find the people who have the mentality or the life that you want, one or the other or both. Okay. That's going to help you get to where you need to go. So in my life, I didn't have those people. There was very few people being intentional about investing in my life. I started listening to those podcasts. I started following those people's content. And then I started talking to people in the personal finance space. And I got so passionate about it. That's why I do what I do today. I'm like, this could be so much easier if people could just give themselves a shot. I want you to give yourself a shot when it comes to your finances. Because despite the fact that what's going on is scary out there, right? That's a fact. But what you do in here, that's well within your control. And I believe that life could be significantly easier, if not completely easier, by being intentional when it comes to your money. Right? That's all I got for you. Megan, is there anything else you want to add or last words you want to give our ladies here?
No, that was great. I mean, definitely the surrounding yourself with the people you want to be. It's, I have a friend group. There's 12 of us. We graduated high school together and we still get together quite often. And I get mixed up all the time because I'm the budget person and I love spreadsheets. And so, but they do it out of love. And I've had a couple come back and be like, I'll hear them say things and I'm like, oh, they're listening. They're listening to what I'm saying. And they're making those little changes. And it's exciting that I get to be that person for them because they, they've not had it anywhere else. And then they get to be that person for somebody else. And so that is how we change the
discussion around money. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not taboo. And it's real because we all know social media, you're just getting highlight reels and, you start seeing all these people take beach vacations and buying the new cars. And you're like, oh, they're living this great life. You don't know what they're doing on the inside. You don't know their money situation and that they are one payment away from losing it all. You just don't know. So be the person. Yeah. Be around the people you'll be, become that person, and then be that person for other people.
Yep. And I want to piggyback off that because I think that's actually a superpower as women. As women, we're nurturers, right? And we learn something and we're like, we want to help everyone that we can, right? It's just to say that when what you do, just automatically, it's like, okay, this person's doing that. Let me just let them know, this is a better way of doing things. I remember when I first started my personal finance journey, when I started being intentional, my friends would start asking me stuff. I never talked about what I was really doing. I don't know if they saw it on how they read that I was doing this. I have no clue. I should ask them actually. But they would start asking me about budgeting. They would ask me about how I finance things or how to build their budgets for them. I'm like, oh snap, this is becoming, even for people who didn't directly ask for stuff. Like I remember I did a financial literacy challenge, and like my friend was like, oh yeah, sinking funds. Like I've heard of that. For me, I was like, this is wicked cool. You know, like she was doing sinking funds before she even knew what sinking funds was, because she learned it by osmosis by being around me. And that's a beautiful effect that we have as women. Not only are we going to affect change in other women, especially since women, despite the fact that feel less confident about money, they manage the finances in most of their households. And so let's build that true confidence, teach our kids, okay, teach our friends, our family, so that way we can build a more powerful future. We all lift each other up. All right. All right, guys. Well, I hope we made our point here. You don't need a raise in order to build wealth, right? Attention is going to be the biggest bulk. And the other thing I just wanted to add to that is, you know, we've seen rich people go broke. This is always going to be the issue, is intention, regardless of how much income you make. So I wish you guys all a good night. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have a good night.
Thank y'all for coming.